testing?
Yep, herd test every month. We've got one next week, actually, so that'll be fun.
It's not the usual sight.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
The CEO traipsing around a muddy cow paddock, the dairy lingo easily flowing. But for Michael Perridge, the milking shed is a throwback to his childhood.
I love being out on farm, love being especially out with the cows, and it's the fresh air. It is really good, and just being able to talk to those people. That's probably some of the challenges of dairy farmers.
Growing up on a dairy farm on the outskirts of Western Sydney meant early starts, lots of free labour, and observing hard work in action.
Long days, long nights, a lot of work, especially when it comes around to dairy farming. It is one of the benefits of dairy farming is it is 24/7, but that's also can be one of its downsides. But that has definitely helped me into my role, and especially with working with people. As long as I don't have to read anything, I'll be okay.
His family's story is intertwined with the fabric of modern multicultural Australia. His Croatian immigrant grandparents came to Australia in 1938 with nothing.
My grandfather immigrated across with my grandmother as well. They met on the boat, and it's just been a history in Australia. It is about growing business, especially for migrants.
They started a dairy in 1951 with just 25 cows. And today, the dairy company boasts a total of 15,000 milking cows across 3 dairy operations in Australia. They are now the major shareholders in Noumi, Australia's biggest export of UHT, or ultra-high temperature treated milk. It's also one of the biggest plant milk processors in the country.
So I became CEO 4 years ago, but our family started supplying them in about 2003 with milk for them to pack to sell at that point in time. That was part of us diversifying our supply arrangements with other processors.
It's a monolithic operation, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The machines never stop humming, the shifts rolling here at the Shepparton factory in regional Victoria.
I think it's hugely important. I mean, I came across the Noumi just on 5 years ago now to develop this nutritional plant that we see behind us. Some of the technology in there is world class. One of the plants is the first in Australia, and the other part is probably one of only 25 in Australia.
Everything is packed and packaged here before being trucked to various distributors, including the top 3 supermarket chains in Australia.
We process about 650,000 litres of milk through our processing facility. So mainly UHT, but also in our protein plant.
Noumi's plant has created 300 extra jobs in the Shepparton area since starting 10 years ago. Tom Dickens is the operations manager and has been able to return home and use his nutrition and science degree.
Oh, it's hugely important for me. I mean, I grew up on a farm, a broadacre farm. My parents still have that farm. I've got 3 young daughters. We can go out to the farm and do the things that we love and support the local community by having such a great facility here in Shepparton.
40 farms in the Victorian region supply the Shepparton facility daily.
The UHT site here 10 years ago was processing around 20 million litres a year. This year will be about 250 million litres of milk a year.
Beautiful day. You could have this all year round, I reckon.
Suppliers include families like the Munzells, who run 400 dairy cows on 400 acres near Echuca in the state's north.
Now they're like, we know where we're going.
Randy Munzell concedes dairying has had its moments of difficulty, especially for his folks.
Definitely, just seeing how, when it was tough, how tough it actually was. Yeah, just managing, knowing that things can be managed is what's kept us going.
A coup for them was becoming a supplier to Noumi. It's meant a solid footing in the industry that's had a bad rap on fair pricing for farmers.
Does it also, and I don't really know how to politely ask this, but does it mean that you feel like you're less likely to get screwed by a company because there is a dairy farmer at the helm?
Yeah.
I feel definitely.
Yeah.
The consistent pricing and orders means they've even started expanding their hoof print.
Got a long-term contract with them, so
Yep.
We've got confidence that the next couple of years are going to be pretty good for us, so the right time for us to expand.
And with that comes investing in improved practices and efficiencies.
We've done a few things, like we're trying to grow more feed and that for the cows. Like we've put in subsurface irrigation up the back, which is very productive.
That's good, Al.
They say it's also been a point of pride, seeing their product so widely used.
These days we'll go into Macca's and we'll see Milk Lab sitting on the counter and you're like, our milk's a part of that.
Yeah.
But milk these days is a pretty loose old term. Would you like a dash of milk in your cuppa? Used to be a pretty straightforward question, but not these days. If there's one sector that's seen rapid transformation, it's dairy and dairy alternatives. Soy, almond, coconut, oat milk. There's a plethora of options, but critically, it's meant an alternative market for farmers. Damien Smith grew up amongst cows, but is now a large pulse and grain farmer and runs a construction business. He lives and breathes being on this dirt. But his business has changed in recent years after taking a customer-first approach.
It made sense to us to go and talk to those people that were using it and then come back. Instead of us having to recreate the cycle, we allow them to tell us what they need, and then we've been developing our product ever since then. The result? Jumping on the oat bandwagon, but growing with specific properties in mind. Specifically more around the oats for the milling products, as opposed to your general oats for sheep feed, and that's been where it's developed from there. Most of his oats end up at Noomi's other major factory in Ingleburn outside of Sydney, where 85 million litres of plant milk and liquid stocks is processed annually. It's definitely a booming market, as seen at the recent Australian Barista Championships in Melbourne, where only plant milk was used. Noomi says in 2023 it had a 92% growth on their oat milk alone, driven by the health-conscious and environmentally concerned consumers. Milk Lab started in 2015 after extensive collaboration with baristas. They came up with a plant range suitable for coffee. That's been a dominant player in that space ever since. The company says it surveyed 900 cafes in 2021 and found that plant-based alternatives already make up 25% of milk coffee sales, and that number is climbing. But it's not all about milk. Well, straight milk, that is. At the state-of-the-art facility, Noomi Nutritionals started production of high-value native dairy proteins in 2019. You know all the protein shakes and recipes you see touted online by fitness fanatics? Well, that's actually a market that Noomi is also targeting, and it's an area that's booming.
Protein is always surplus generally in dairy milk, and it was an opportunity for us to look at how do we take some of those protein fractionations and put them into other products to deliver them into the other forms for Australian consumers to look for.
One of those proteins that has been a real focus is lactoferrin, a cow's milk extract. The CSIRO predicts the protein sector could be worth an additional $13 billion to the Australian industry by 2030.
Very sophisticated filtering systems through which we can run skim milk and separate proteins out. We also use a special technique called ion exchange chromatography, which essentially acts like a magnet and draws the lactoferrin out from the milk.
Sounds simple, right? But to produce just 1 kilogram of lactoferrin, around 10,000 litres of milk is required. Noomi currently produces around 8% of the global lactoferrin supply, or 25 metric tonnes.
Currently, global supply is limited to about 10 producers and about 450 to 500 metric tonnes around the world.
So what is actually in this powder, nicknamed pink gold? Decades of research has proven it packs an antiviral punch, but at Noomi they think there's even more to discover. That's why, in collaboration with University of Newcastle and Monash University, they have a team of scientists investigating the medicinal properties of the powder.
Today's research is focusing more on looking at lactoferrin and its response to specific viruses like coronavirus and other common cold-causing viruses.
With a global shortage of the product, they're also trying to replicate it without the use of so much milk. And that's where they've come up with precision fermentation.
As the demand for lactoferrin globally increases, we have to find smarter, more sustainable ways to produce more lactoferrin. Precision fermentation of lactoferrin offers that opportunity. Numi is currently working out ways to commercially produce precision fermentation lactoferrin at scale.
Stay with us, but essentially the genes to make lactoferrin are inserted into the yeast, and under the right conditions, a powder is produced identical to the cow's milk extracted lactoferrin powder. And it's these high-value products like this that Michael Perich believes will future-proof the sector.
We don't want to just become a commodity player. We want to make sure we're bringing value and we're reinventing new products that deliver that taste and those health benefits to the people that purchase our product.
But Numi hasn't been without its troubles over the years. A $5 million penalty has just been reached with the Australian Securities and Investment Commission over federal court proceedings against Numi and 2 former executives in relation to alleged historic breaches of continuous disclosure obligations when Numi was trading as Freedom Foods Group Limited. There's also a separate shareholder class action in relation to Freedom Foods.
That's been a challenge for the business, but when I look across there, we're working on rebuilding the culture. The entire executive team has been replaced, and some of those things take time to be rectified.
The growth of plant milk and their brand Milk Lab has certainly helped. That side of the business grew by 10.3% to over $100 million last year. As China's demand slows, Numi says Southeast Asia is a focus going forward, where plant milks continue to gain popularity.
We've seen more consumption around either dairy or plant-based, and we're wanting to take our product into those markets and make Milk Lab a global branded product from Australia.
Bold plans and big moves in a space that's ever-changing, as farmers try to do their bit to keep ahead of the curve.
Yeah. The world's got to be fed, and that's what we do, produce quality food. So I'm very confident.
Yeah.
And especially in the dairy industry, there's getting less and less of us. So in terms of for dairy for us, we feel like there's a big future as
Supplier.
supplier.
You make decisions today on a farm, especially in dairy, that is impacting what you do in 4 years' time. So it has been rocky. There's been a lot of changes over the last number of years, but I haven't really ever seen a point in time that I felt like this isn't the right place to be in.